So first of all, Chris, thanks for the opportunity to participate. Love the panel discussion that preceded me. I will say that I am not an archaeologist or anthropologist, and also agree that I'm involved with Earth Archive because I believe it has the potential to solve a number of challenging problems, or as I frame them as wicked problems. So a few things that I'll talk about, and I left enough time, hopefully, for Q&A at the end. I'm going to talk about energy, water, food, nexus, stress, and innovation. I'll primarily focus on water because that is my domain expertise, but also engage in how water intersects with agriculture, urbanization, and energy. And talk a little bit about wicked problems to really frame, well, how do we bring diverse stakeholders together to solve some of these significant environmental, economic, and social challenges? So with that, why water? Well, water is critical for really every activity. And if you look at the projections, by 2050, we will need about 60% more water for agriculture, food, about 80% for energy. This is primarily thermoelectric power generation, not renewables, and about 55% more water for other uses, including drinking water purposes. This assumes business as usual. So I think everyone participating in the Earth Archive believes that we need to change the status quo and business as usual. So use this as a way to get the attention of stakeholders to really drive innovation in a number of different categories. Why worry? Why worry about water? I'm based in Denver, and we're in the Colorado River Basin, and it's facing some very significant challenges related to scarcity, quality, and inequity and access. But if you look at what are the major issues here, water is overallocated and undervalued. I'd say that globally for the most part. It's poorly governed. There was some discussion of the role of the public sector earlier. It's non-circular. So, we use water once and we throw it away. And we're facing the tension, stress associated with need for water for different industry sectors and uses, whether it's ag or urban. And the impacts of climate change. Again, we're seeing that globally. And right now we're seeing it very acutely in the Colorado River Basin and the American West in general. Mentioned water is central for energy and food. Someone earlier referenced the Sustainable Development Goals. I love the comment about, well, we're not on track to achieve the SDGs at the national level. So perhaps let's focus on regions or city-states where we can achieve traction. So water intersects with a number of the SDGs, not just SDG 6, which is focused on universal access to safe drinking water, sanitation, and hygiene. So when we think about, well, how do we collect data that drives us to better solutions with respect to water and how it impacts the SDGs, it can be incredibly powerful. A wicked problem. I usually start my presentations focused on wicked problems for a number of reasons. One is really central. And I believe we're seeing this with the Earth Archive participants and speakers, that it involves many stakeholders. No one stakeholder group can solve wicked problems. It's got a longer definition, but a couple key attributes that help us think through what does innovation look like. Wicked problems hardly ever sit conveniently within the responsibility of any one organization. Again, it's not just a public sector issue. It's not just an issue for multinationals or entrepreneurs. It's really everyone has a role to play. And some wicked problems, water is a classic example, is that they're characterized by chronic public policy failure, which I highlighted briefly before. So who solves wicked problems? And this is adapted from some of the work that Tom Higley has done, who's based here in Denver. and has launched a couple of programs to identify wicked problems and bring in stakeholders to come up with solutions. So if you think about the universe of stakeholders, entrepreneurs have speed and focus, so they can pivot quickly, they can adapt on a dime. The public sector, lower right, they have great size and scale, but they move slowly. Again, that was discussed earlier. And the other stakeholders sit somewhere in between. It's meant to be illustrative, but you get the idea that the private sector sits probably somewhere in between, NGOs in a similar fashion. But you really have to bring in the attributes of all of these stakeholder groups to tackle water, energy, water, and food issues and other environmental and social issues. So what has to change? I usually say everything has to change. When you think about how we use water, we get it from one or two sources. We move it around with great loss through transport, and then we use it and we throw it away. We really can't do that anymore. Water is way too valuable for that. So really, what we need to be thinking about is, what does a 21st century roadmap look like? And again, I focus on water because it's central to water, to energy rather, and agriculture. So diversifying sources of water, so not just surface water and groundwater, but rainfall, air moisture capture, alternative sources such as reusing wastewater, and viewing utilities as factories, essentially, where you would use water over and over again after you treat it, but also looking at wastewater byproducts as sources of nutrients and energy. All of this is enabled by digital technologies, which I'll get into in a few minutes. And market opportunities. Again, I keep referring back to the panel discussion about, what are investors looking at? Well, the Nexus market opportunities are significant and growing. They've only accelerated during the pandemic. And just some facts in terms of what the water sector market is expected to grow by over what period of time. Ag in particular, smart ag is growing because we need to create more food, more crop per drop in a more sustainable and resilient manner. And the renewable energy sector as we go through this process of decarbonization. So there's a lot of investment opportunities out there right now driven by primarily scarcity and lack of access. A couple of the big technology trends to look at, Singularity University and X Prize and Peter Diamandis, who is the founder of both, talk a lot about really exponential technologies that have the ability to have a very big impact in a very short period of time. The two that I tend to focus on, because they are having an impact, is digital technologies. Again, things like artificial intelligence, blockchain solutions, augmented and virtual reality, and advances in material science. So advanced membranes that give you the ability to desalinate water with a lower energy footprint. Things like that are really having a positive impact, not just with respect to water, but things like water and ag. So digital, the way to view digital value creation is the ability to collect data, aggregate it, analyze it, push it out, and turn it into actionable information, either to react to something or being proactive. So, Earth Archive is very much at the center of this in terms of collecting data and making that data accessible and turning it into actionable information. So as you think about the power of collecting data and turning it into actionable information, it really is transformative, and we're seeing that across a range of sectors right now. Just a quick overview of some of the digital technologies that are operating at the watershed scale. in supply chains and operations. These are examples of companies that have come out of water technology hubs, accelerators, not just focused on water, but focused on the intersection of water and agriculture, for example. So these are companies that are out there that are measuring things like flood prediction, cloud to street, Jibe, real-time water quality monitoring for surface water, and others. Supply chain is important to everyone, in particular the private sector. If you're a food and beverage company, you need to have a sustainable and resilient supply chain. So how do you leverage digital technologies? Absolutely critical. Arable is focused on crop productivity and resource use, in particular water is same as crop metrics. And then operations. We need to do better in both the utility sector and the industrial sector in terms of managing resources. So managing water, managing energy, and associated carbon emissions from that, and also the assets that transport water, treat water, and deliver water to a variety of different sources. Companies like PlutoShift and AquaAsse are artificial intelligence companies that work across both the industrial and the utility sector, for example. Getting into the advanced material science realm, we now have the ability to collect air moisture and aggregate that for drinking water purposes. This is a company called Source. The lower left image is a series of panels on a rooftop that can collect several liters per day per panel. And the top is a array of panels similar to what you would see with solar power. So really the ability to deliver safe drinking water, for example, at scale off-grid. Water treatment and energy, there's a company called Cambrian that has innovative water treatment technology that also generates energy. We talked a little bit about that energy water nexus. And they are deploying their technologies right now in the beverage sector, food and beverage very broadly. But again, thinking about Nexus solutions and how scarcity is driving innovative technologies, they also have a innovative business model, a water energy purchase agreement where you don't buy the equipment, you buy the byproducts, energy and water. And then a really interesting startup technology, Desalinator, part of this is cut off, unfortunately. But it's solar-powered desal, again, giving either communities or, in this case, a pilot for Carlsberg beer, the ability to treat water off-grid using solar power. Again, it frees up water for other purposes and goes back to that 21st century roadmap that I highlighted previously. So where do these technologies come from? A number of different platforms and programs, a few that I'll illustrate here that I've been involved with that I find to be really impactful. The first is the Nature Conservancy has a partnership with Techstars. They're based here in Denver. They are focused on sustainability solutions. These are 5 companies that were in the last cohort pre-pandemic that are solving water issues. Microterra is solving water and food issues. And I mentioned Jibe previously. So really interesting startups and early growth stage companies that are being identified and mentored and scaled through a very different partnership with an NGO and a startup hub. And then also AB InBev a couple of years ago started something called the 100+ Accelerator, where they identified startup early growth stage companies that were solving particular issues around supply chain, packaging, climate change, water, and others. This year, they have brought in Coca-Cola, Unilever, and Colgate-Palmolive. So think about the impact that 4 multinationals at this scale have in identifying innovative solutions. Just a couple more slides here. Private sector, you're seeing companies like Microsoft leverage what they do best in terms of giving AI technology solutions to NGOs, such as the Freshwater Trust. But also they launched $1 billion climate fund. And they've also invested in a water innovation impact fund with a few other investors. So again, multinationals recognizing that issues such as energy, water, and food and climate change need to be solved, and they are part of the solution. And then finally, prize competitions have a lot of impact in terms of getting people's attention and mobilizing entrepreneurs to come up with innovative approaches, X Prize being one of them, Imagine H2O with partners such as 11th Hour Racing and Blue Water, and some of the companies that have come out of the Imagine H2O program. A final thought, I use this quote all the time. I believe it to be true. The future has arrived. It's just not evenly distributed yet. So if you want to look at the, get a glimpse of the future, it's out there. You'll see it in startups. You'll see it with investor communities and hubs and accelerators. So thanks for the opportunity to be part of this. Really excited about the Earth Archive and what we are collectively doing and how we'll change the world. So thank you.
Hey, well, thanks so much for that. I was wondering if we have a couple more minutes. I was wondering if you could talk maybe about what you see happening with the Colorado River Basin and where you see solutions, what solutions are needed for that in a general sense, and where you see those solutions coming from.
Sure. Yeah, Chris, thanks. As you know, that we are very active in the Colorado River Basin through an investment fund that we started, and then some other programs right now. The Colorado is facing profound water scarcity. So what can we do to collect real-time data, aggregate the data, and push it out to stakeholders? We talked about that before. So, everything from water availability, real-time water quality data acquisition, really is a way to catalyze public policy changes. So, you can have agriculture in the desert, you can have cities in the desert, you just can't have it the way it is right now. So, our view is that some of the things that you're doing clearly with Earth Archive and LiDAR data, coupled with some of the technologies that I highlighted previously, have the ability to really intervene in changing public policy and also delivering solutions to both the public and the private sector.
Where do you see the future? I mean, where do you see the future of the Colorado River Basin? I mean, how much will be resolved, and what are going to be some of the long-term impacts?
Yeah, well, yeah, we're going to have to do more with less, and we're going to have to do it differently. So, you're going to have to see people make choices. Do you want to grow crops in Arizona, or do you want to grow cities? If you want to do both, something has to give. Are we going to keep building dams and pipelines? I hope not. Are we going to have to move from centralized water treatment systems to decentralized systems that are more sustainable and resilient? Yeah, without a doubt. Will you have a lawn, Chris? Probably not.
Interestingly, when we moved into this house, and we moved into this house in 2005, we had a lawn, and we pulled it out, put rocks in, and we were the first ones in our neighborhood to do that, and we got a lot of comments from neighbors, and we don't have an HOA, so we were able to do that. And just in the last 5 years, I've had a lot of the old-time neighbors walk by and catch me out in the front yard or something and say, when you guys did that, we thought it was crazy. Now we get it. now we absolutely understand why you did that. So
yeah, so I mean, I'll make a comment about that. So first of all, bravo. You know, the impact you have, I believe, goes beyond what you'll save through your lawn. You've just influenced someone who is now more aware of the issue that you raised. And how do we change public policy? It's really by, you know, framing these issues in a way that people understand and can start to influence public policy in a different way.
yeah, and I mean, we did that because obviously we wanted to save water and stuff, and we understand the environmental implications of it. But also, I just hate grass farming.
Hey, Chris, I live in a condo, which, you know, you can probably tell. Yeah, you know, I think we're really all trying to change the status quo by intervening in areas that tap into, you know, technologies, what we know well, relationships. You know, you've built an ecosystem of stakeholders through the Earth Archive. That's powerful and will be enduring.
Well, thank you so much, Will, and thanks for all the work that you've done for the Earth Archive, and thanks for this great talk. Well, and you know, we'll talk again very soon.
Sounds good.
And with that, I'd like to introduce our next speaker.